had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at housefarms.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back. Johnny, can we hear you? Can you check for me and make sure I can hear you? I don't hear anything. Nope, you're chipmunky for some reason, and I'm not quite sure why. That's very strange. So we will just deal with Johnny Million in terms of he'll use sign language or something, or he'll gesture.
Selfishly, I just want to hear my happy song.
Yeah, we'll get that. That's yes, at some point. Something squirrely, John, on your end. I know, like I hear him plugging and unplugging. That's fun. So all's well. So Philip, we were talking during the break. Please, guys, follow at Philip Ittner on Twitter. 1L, 2 T's. Vladimir Kara-Murza, who's one of the Russian opposition leaders, who was scooped up and arrested, put out an op-ed in the Washington Post this week saying he feels Russia will be free of Vladimir Putin and that kind of rule, and he's never been more sure of it in his life, while he's in jail. Other opposition leaders in Russia as well have, obviously been locked up. They added 9 years to, beg your pardon, to Alexei Navalny's sentence. And then you were saying that there's the opposition in Belarus. Belarus was rising up as well, and saying this is time to rise up. It seems like Putin is in a trap of his own making. He's purged. 4 days ago, it was reported that he purged 100 FSB agents. A day later, it was 150. His main military commander has had a heart attack, apparently from a combination of cholesterol and lead, and a large knife or whatever. And
Novichok.
Yeah, right. He fell on a knife 4 times. It was the third one really, was the one that did the most damage. He's just a clumsy dude. And again, this desperation that they may lay waste to Ukraine, that they may attempt basically a war of attrition at this point out of just flailing, macho failure is a legitimate fear right now. And I think Mariupol is a good example, or even some of the eastern areas where some of their supposedly Russia-aligned citizenry are. But the truth is, they don't need that area for anything more than land and trucks and pipelines. They don't give a crap about towns and cities and human beings. So Mariupol, they can level to nothing because they never need it to be a city ever again. As a matter of fact, as it's a city, it's something they have to deal with all the time. Pesky human beings getting in the way of their shipping oil to the Black Sea and making money getting it to Africa, which is the next big stop. So is that the concern, that ultimately Ukraine's just outlived its usefulness as as far as a territory of human beings?
Well, I mean, they've always tried to suppress the concept of Ukraine as a national or a cultural identity. That's why the Ukrainians are fighting so hard, because they have fought for the idea that, we have a national identity. And the Russians, even going back to the Tsarist eras, have always said, no, you don't. You are a Slav only in so much as we let you be a Slav.
Right.
We get to decide what that is. And the Ukrainians said, no, we want to decide who we are as a people. We want to have a home. That's what this is all about. And it's been funny to me how, if I've addressed that, let me address one more issue about that.
Sure.
And then I'll move on to the cultural stuff. It is also interesting to note that they did not attack the missile factory that created the Neptune until after the Moskva was sank. Strategically, if you are fighting a country and they have a weapons factory, why would you not destroy that on day one?
Right. Agreed.
because
You need
they
it.
were hoping that they could grab it
Right.
and use it for their own purposes.
Right.
So there is this mentality of like, we want to destroy the place. We certainly want to destroy their culture, their language, their art, their sense of self-identity. But we really like those factories, especially
Yeah.
the ones that build munitions that we lost after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And so we want to keep those intact until now. I think they have had a rude awakening that they're actually at war with Ukraine, which is astounding to say,
Right.
but it is still true. This reaction, this visceral reaction we've seen on Russian television of them being like, how dare they actually fight back?
Right. In our own country.
You know,
how in the world could they fire into our country? The nerve of these people, which is, I got to say, if you're attacking a country on your border, at some point when they come back to you, like start hitting you, it's just part and parcel to the war you've started. Like, I don't get the, I mean, I suppose there's some reasoning in the Russian public. They think this is good messaging. Like, these little upstarts.
well, it's like your older.
think,
It's like your older brother. It's like your older brother doing the whole game of like, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting
Right.
yourself. And then when the younger brother actually does get to a certain age where he goes, hey, stop that, and he punches the older brother, it's no longer a game anymore.
Right.
Now
right.
it's like, what?
Right.
You know, and
That-
that's been their mentality.
Right. The how dare you aspect of it is just sort of hilarious on its own. Now, one of the other things that's there is this, and this is consequential. The Russians are actually engaged in military exercises off the coast of Japan, near the Thule Islands, near an American warship that is, going through exercises with Japan about Taiwan. The Chinese are trying to do like these Strait of Formosa exercises, this big like muscle flex currently, because we sent a delegation to Taiwan. They were there, and so the Chinese just had the ships like do a lap while our delegates were there, and then when our delegates left, it was enough. And it's like everybody's like, a major escalation. Like, no, there's none of these ships can go any further past Taiwan than like 150 miles. It's not a major escalation. It's par for the course, and they're not moving on it. Meanwhile, the Russians cannot fight this war, much less a war on two fronts. They would love, I'm sure, to pull the Wagner Group out of Africa and out of some of their other subsidiary states that have been holding a chokehold on. Right?
Yeah.
They can't afford to do it though, because honestly, if they do, those places will fall. And the same, and in terms of the idea that they would somehow exercise some sort of power on the Japanese islands now while this is happening, it's an absurdity. The only thing about that is that they can't get those boats to the Black Sea. They can't get them to any territory that would actually affect. They'd have to go past NATO ships and through NATO territory to get anywhere near firing on Ukraine.
So they just pass through the Mediterranean, through the Bosphorus Straits,
right.
all the rest of it. But the Kuril Islands are really tricky.
Yeah.
Because out in Japan, in Japanese waters.
Yeah.
Because, and it's so pathetic that it's this that it goes back this far, but they're still. I was going to use a bit of a swear word. They're still posteriorly damaged by the fact that they lost the Russo-Japanese War.
Right.
And that's 1898.
They're butthurt. You could say butthurt. Butthurt's fine.
Can I say butthurt? Okay.
You can say butthurt.
They're butthurt about losing the Russian-Japanese war, the Russo-Japanese War. Now, they only grabbed the Kuril Islands in the last days of the Second World War after VE Day,
right,
Victory in Europe Day, and then they were like, "Oh, let's do a territorial grab." So that whole thing is just rife with pathetic Russian imperialism, and it makes no sense.
Well, it's sort of it is a further extension of their Crimea plan. Broom all the Turkish people out, broom all the Ukrainians of Turkish descent out, and start seeding it with ethnic Russians. And then in about 2 decades, everybody there speaks Russian. That whole argument. Same with the east of Ukraine. They were doing the same thing with the islands north of Japan, which makes no sense to anyone. At least there's some people can buy the territorial proximity of Ukraine, even though it wouldn't make any sense if you suddenly took over Finland and went parts of Finland. They tried, parts of Finland have Russian speaking people in it. Well, the Finnish speak everything. That's not fair. So this is, and yet I think it's just to keep those ships busy and act as a distraction, or maybe to keep track of American warships.
And it's a flex,
right?
Well, and it's also a flex. It's also like you think that what they haven't twigged onto yet, the Russians, is that this has been so catastrophic for them, and it's their land forces being beaten by a country that mistakenly, by the way, the world thought was a second power, whereas me having come here for 21 years and certainly since 2014, I was like, no, man, the Ukrainians are getting ready for a major fight.
Right.
And they are training their people to a level of excellence that the Russians can't match.
Right.
I was never under the thought that Ukraine was a secondary power. But
right.
This kind of flex idea of what the Russians are doing right now, they haven't twigged to the fact that in order to be a bully, you have to be scary. And nobody's scared of you anymore.
Right. That's the weird part. And the only thing that's scary is the absolute fear of nuclear missiles. And a test that was done by the Israeli military this week pokes an enormous hole in that. And we will discuss that when we come back, because we got to take a break. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Okay,
all the creativity has been removed from the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide bumpers. Now welcome back to the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Thank you, Professor Hawkins.
Well, excuse me. Since my name is Hal, as a computer American, I'm personally offended. That's cultural appropriation if I've ever heard it. Yeah. Give me your answer, dude. So, a couple of questions in the chat room for Phil right out of the gate was your big secret meetings. Can we talk about your big secret meetings or not?
My big secret meetings are it is ongoing.
Yes.
And what I can say is this. The reason why I was not able to talk about this week is because there is a contingent of this that is going to be part of a public disclosure. Gotcha. And there are news organizations that are involved in that, and there are discussions ongoing as to who gets the exclusive rights to make this announcement. Mm-hmm. And the news media, being the news media, they are a little bit. There's a little bit of a kind of squabble internally within certain news organizations. So the
about how much to talk about or how much to discuss, you mean?
Well, there's going to be I can say this. This is how much I can say. Is there is going to be an announcement at some point very soon. In order to do that, a news organization will get an exclusive to be the ones who deliver that announcement.
Right.
But because of internal squabbling within a couple of different news organizations,
right,
they have yet
They're all
to
fighting
determine
over who
is going.
Right.
Yeah, they get to decide who gets to break the news.
whether it's. Yeah, so basically there's a big fight broke out at CNN whether Jake Tapper or Anderson Cooper gets to fly over. The reason he's been off the air is because they're flying him over there to do a one-on-one with somebody or something like that. That kind of stuff, you mean? Internally in the one that's got it?
I did not say that.
No, I'm just speculating upon a hypotenuse, as you do. So, it was Sean Penn.
That's an
Sean
interesting
Penn,
speculation, and
yes.
I wonder if that's true or not.
Yes, I think
I can neither confirm or deny.
My guess is somewhere right now, Anderson Cooper and Sean Penn are leg wrestling over it. We'll figure it out. So that said, we do have some questions, and I want to get to a couple of them before we get to this break, so we can get through some of these for Phil. He's live in Lviv, which is always hard to say. That's a lot of L's and V's in a very short.
I told you I'd change my name for you.
Yeah, that's right. I appreciate it. Philip Bittner in Lviv. All right.
Bob
what do we have,
Jones.
Johnny?
That's
Right.
Bob Jones.
So we've got before the question, we had a super chat from Jerry Cummings, and that was to support for Ukraine.
Oh,
So thank you very much, Jerry. Diane Russell has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that Putin will use nukes?
The big question of the hour. Before the Moskva, I would have said absolutely not. The fact that the CIA director said that we have to take that threat seriously gives me pause for concern. If he does do it, then Russia will be set back, 50 years. They will be a pariah state again.
Also, China will be out.
Also,
'Cause as much as
China will be out. China gives
China an exit strategy that they currently do not have right now. They'll lose some of the African nations as well that have been abstaining from the vote because they're afraid that will start a rolling tactical nuke usage in the Middle East and North Africa, which is something a lot of these dictators have been chomping at the bit to try and do on their behalf, and whether they have the capacity to do it is immaterial. Their fear of it being okayed will be enough to tap some of them back, the ones that are on the edge of it.
And look, in a worst case scenario, I could see them doing a tactical in the center of Kiev to try and decapitate the Ukrainian government. And I could see them spreading the narrative of, well, how is it okay that the Americans use the nuke in Hiroshima, but we can't use one? It's nonsensical. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying what knowing the Russians,
right,
they would play that narrative. It wouldn't work. Mm-hmm. The world would turn against them, rightfully so, because the use of a nuclear weapon is not only a war crime in essence, but it is also not effectual. It doesn't work. It's not a good weapon. No. It's not a good weapon. You can do that conventionally.
Yeah.
All
it does is irradiate the land for a long time, and if your idea is that eventually you're going to take it for yourself, it's a dumb move.
Yeah, and there are low yield tactical nukes that would be basically creating another Chernobyl, which it would be.
They already have one of those,
and also and we already have one of those on Ukrainian territory.
Right.
But there's two things about this nuclear threat that the Russians are floating. One is the fact that it clearly, I think the Biden administration is 100% right. The fact that they are floating it as a threat shows that they are losing badly, because you don't go all the way to 11.
No.
If you're playing pretty good at 8. So there's that. And secondly, the exact phraseology of what the Russians said was, we will if NATO and the United States continue to support Ukraine, we will use tactics or weapons that had previously been unconceivable.
Mm-hmm.
The possibility of that meaning nuclear or chemical is sure, it's out there. As scary as that is. And as also, I personally don't believe it, but let's put that aside.
Right.
There's also the fact that they have cyber capabilities, and they have the possibility to attack in ways that we haven't seen previously, because cyber weapons have not really been used yet. I don't want to be alarmist. I think that our cyber warriors are very capable. Mm-hmm. I also think that even if they did attack our power grid, that the worst that they could do is knock out power in a very limited capability and a very limited location for a very short period of time. Now, does that mean everybody should go rush out and grab water and food and all the rest of it because the electricity is going to go out for a week? No, I don't want to be alarmist. I don't want to scare
Right.
people, but they do have the capability to do it. So, look, if I'm wrong and you've got a bunch of tin beans in your basement, I'm not saying anybody should be a prepper. I'm not saying, but do they have the
Right.
capability to do it? Yes, they do. But
There,
we
we
have
are
good
also,
defenses.
yeah, we do, and we
We're-
also
yeah, we're pretty good at our defense.
Yeah, the
And
Biden
in addition to
administration
that,
has been
even if
reaching
they
out to
did-
all the major metropolitan areas and doing these secondary backup exercises where they've got an entire
Yeah.
like single switchover after the ransomware task force that Biden put together last year. They knew that this was going to be an increasing problem over time and that giant municipalities would be at the effect of these kind of organizations. So, these state actors on behalf of the Russians. And it was always a vulnerability that would be on the sort of the equivalence of a tactical nuke in that regard if we just didn't do anything about it. So each city, Los Angeles, Seattle, New York, San Francisco, all the big cities, a lot of the even smaller tacit cities, anywhere there's a structural element nearby, like the Hoover Dam or something like that has to be watched out for, they're all on a turnkey system now, where their entire system is dual backup to this and kept separate off the internet for this thing, so that and manually updated, so that if they ever did that,
and the last time I checked,
you flip a switch and you're back.
The last time I checked, the Americans have very good cyber capabilities,
Oh, yeah.
defensive and offensive, but they also have some pretty darn good civil engineers. And even
Yes.
if they knocked out our power grid for a little while, we'd be back up and running, no problem. What it
Russia
would do
does
is
not.
piss us off, no end.
That's right.
And secondly, it's also, but it is also interesting to note that they do like to road test these new weapon systems, just like they did with the disinformation campaign that resulted in Trump. And I will argue with anybody who disputes that.
Mm-hmm.
We were attacked in 2016. Our election was subverted by the Russians, and I will stand by that. They road tested that in their own backyard in Georgia, Ukraine, the Baltic states, to a certain extent in Poland.
Marie Le Pen.
So they like to test this stuff in their own backyard.
Brexit.
And they have actually shut down the electrical grid in Kiev. I think it's 2016.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful Wired article from that period.
Let's
that
take a
goes
break.
into it in
Hold
great
on.
depth.
I'm at a hard break, so let me.
So they have
let's
the
come back out.
capability.
We'll talk. Yes, right. They definitely do, and as do we, which is an interesting part, and that's what I want to talk about after we come back, because that changes the physical nature of war as well. When we come back, it's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
The Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Now, we were talking about during the break at infotainmentwars.com. We don't need the documents. We've got the video. We were talking about the fact that, Russia has done attacks like they would want to do in the United States, in Ukraine and in Chechnya and in Georgia. And I brought up the fact that the only difference is that at those times, they had people in country negatively, helping tee these things up. They more than likely had people in these power plants, in these computer systems. They were even the software. I remember that big story a couple years ago about how a good portion of American companies were using a Russian antiviral.
Yes.
And everybody was like, "We're what?" Like they woke up to it all at once and everybody stopped. Like they just like cold turkey, everybody went, it's like they walked over the computer humming and went, not doing, just writing an email, just gotta erase. And
this little
dongle?
this memory stick.
Yes.
Oh, don't worry about it.
yeah, I'm just gonna put it over here on this desk and walk away. Right. So the issue that the Russians have, besides
Bob's got it right. Conspiracy.
Yeah, that's right. The ironically named Kaspersky, which sounds like conspiracy. It sounds like the Russian word for conspiracy. The question I have is that, with Finland and Sweden definitely joining NATO, there is no way that after all this shakes out, that Russia's going to win. They're like the Ukrainians are disputing Crimea right now. They have troops in the area. in a way they did not. They are pushing back on this. The destruction of Mariupol, they're just using it. The Russians are using, I think they're weaponizing it because they don't ever intend to need Mariupol or want it there again. So they just might as well level it and scare the crap out of everybody, forgetting that even there were Russian sympathetic citizens, at one time, and many of them are getting killed. The eastern part of Ukraine, they're now, there was a Russian soldier. Now the Ukrainians have been intercepting audio of Russian soldiers talking to people and posting it, and it's sort of been ongoing. Now I personally believe in taking those things with a grain of salt, because as somebody who doesn't speak Russian and doesn't see what's going on there, hearing somebody talk on a phone to somebody else on a phone, I'm like, that's the easiest thing to fake in the world. That said, were it true, and a lot of it seems to be aligned with itself, there was a Ukrainian intelligence said in an audio clip of an intercepted call released Friday by Ukraine's security service, a woman can be heard expressing concern about the attack on the town of Klomovo that Moscow blamed on Ukrainian forces. Klomovo is inside Russia, which reportedly left 7 people wounded. That was ours effing stuff up, the purported soldier quickly responds. It's necessary. They do that to provoke the Ukrainians, and that's why they hit it. He said, we talked to the bosses, and they said that's how it is. The same happened in the Chechen war. They blew up apartments in Moscow as if it were terrorists. It was really the FSB, he said, referring to the series of bombings in 1999. We've talked about those on the air, Philip, that helped bring Vladimir Putin to power. Prominent Kremlin critics and defectors like Alexander Litvinenko have long accused Russia's security sources of orchestrating the bombings themselves to drum up support for the Chechen war and for Putin. The unnamed
we've talked about this. Yeah. I was there.
Yeah, right. He says there's no way the Ukrainians could have reached Klomovo in the Bryansk region from where they are, and tells his wife, which is the woman they believe in, he plans to refuse to go further with the war in Ukraine. And there was another story related to that there were somewhere in the order of 600 Russian troops near the border. They were inside Ukraine, but basically just dropped their stuff and walked back home. This happened in Belarus as well, but this is a new turn that they're having to deal with. That they just walked off the job. They're being paid. They're making $30 a month. That's some heavy work to end up with $30 in your account, unless you die, in which case your family gets way more than that. But at this rate, what is it actually? What's the ruble worth?
Yeah, all of $10,000.
Right.
Which, for a Russian is actually pretty good money, but it's going to last you 5 years tops.
Right.
Look, of course they're doing that kind of stuff. That's their modus operandi, is to attack themselves, blame it on the other person, and then enact revenge. I was in Moscow when the apartment buildings were hit. I have no doubt in my mind that it was the FSB, and this kind of, it's not even, it's to the point where it's not even a question anymore. Again, this goes back to the idea of, like, you can only be a bully when you are a proper threat. Well, that bubble is burst, and equally, it speaks to the idea that you can only play the false flag card so many times before people start going, I don't know about that.
Right.
So it's just they keep going to the same playbook, and I think the globe, through what's happening here, has gotten to a point where they're like, we see you, we know what you're doing, stop. Just.
Well, it's also
and what's scary. What's scary is they haven't realized that their mask has been revealed, and they're still playing these games. Whereas the world's like, we know you're a bully, and we know you lie, and we know you do these false flags.
Right. Well, also, I think they are not. I don't think Russia is processing the impact of OSINT right now, open source intelligence for the who's at home, that is never in the history of Earth has there been this much information available about battlefield logistics, troop positions. There are private and publicly available, from Google Maps to subscription-only satellites that have all been repositioned over the Ukrainian territories right now that are feeding intel just to anybody who wants to look right now. And we're seeing, can you imagine?
I've seen it.
Yes.
I've seen it. I've got people in Lviv who I'm sitting down with over a drink at a bar somewhere, and they're like, hey, look at this. And they wouldn't do that if they feared it would lose them their security clearance.
Right.
So there is something going on within Western intelligence, primarily American intelligence agencies, where they're like, share away.
Well,
show it as much as you
that's
want.
the most fascinating aspect of this. The democratization of intelligence. What a strange and brand new concept. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're used to a certain level of intel that we take for granted, namely Google Maps or Apple Maps. You can see apartments. We joke about it all the time, like somebody will moon the Google truck as it's driving by, and then for a couple of days before somebody scrubs it, if you go to this address, people go to this address and look 2 houses over in the window, and there's a dude mooning you, and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And da, da, da. But that level of like personal view of street level stuff is ridiculous. It's available to the Russians, certainly, but it's also available to everybody. And when the Russians need to hide where they're going and the Ukrainians don't effectively, the Ukrainians are like, we're everywhere. Wherever you find us, we're also everywhere else. We don't have a single command structure spot right now at all, nor are we going to for this entire battle.
Yeah, and while I don't want to steal Johnny Million's thunder, I did see and this addresses that, how intelligence and information has changed in a digital world. In the chat, I saw someone saying, "Is there any proof that the Russians are starting to get their information from shortwave stuff like VOA or the Beeb?" They may very well do, but they also have VPNs. So they can get online. I'm still online on Facebook, although Facebook is shut off. I'm still able to talk to my Russian friends because they're using VPNs.
Right. Same thing in China.
They haven't caught up.
Well, and
so
it always moves. All the major VPN companies. For those that don't know, it's a virtual.
Yes, they do get shortwave, but
for those that don't know, VPN, and if you're not on YouTube all the time and you don't see the ads constantly, a virtual private network is a way to convince the servers around you that you're actually somewhere else. It gives you an IP address that's someplace else. It's a very quirky aspect of the internet where it thinks you are accessing the internet from an entirely different area. Because internalized, the networks are all connected all over the place, so it can't really stop it like a water pipe where you can turn off a spigot. So unless they actively choose to do it. When I was in China, I had to do my show and watch videos and talk to people via VPN everywhere I was. And the Chinese government looks the other way with a certain number of the VPNs. But the idea that they want people to believe, and they shut them down every so often, with the idea that, like, we could do this at any time, just watch yourself. We're watching you, watch yourself. And the Russians played at this game as well. The reality is, no, they're not. They can't. It moves around so much. This is a cyberpunk era aspect of human life that we thought would look a lot cooler in the early 90s or late 80s or even in the 70s. But in reality, it's pretty perfunctory and boring, and it all happens inside your laptop. And you don't have to go to some skeevy part of town to an internet cafe and hook a wire into your forehead to get past the cyber guardians. It's a lot more kind of rudimentary. And it is a huge aspect of this. And of course it's working. And that's kind of fascinating in and of itself. We got to take a break. It's our final break of the show. And when we come back, Chicago, I think we do need the happy ending just for Philip, just to keep his spirits up during this time of strife. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Spersky has a great VPN.